Hi, my name is Lexi Burkhart, and welcome to Insight Interviews. Today, my guest is Zoe Elrick, and today we're going to be talking about her background in landscape architecture, as well as her nature programs that she teaches in Michigan with the Galien Valley and Culture Program. And we're also going to be talking about a new project that she's developing called the ABC Garden. I really hope you enjoy this interview with Zoe. She's so talented and smart, and if you want to learn more about her, please check out the links below. Thanks. Hi, Zoe. How are you?
Hi, Lexi. How are you doing? I'm doing
Good.
good.
Good. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about your work creating landscapes of learning and landscape architecture, your nature classes, and your ABC program that you run now in Michigan.
That's great.
Yay. So, first of all, I just want to ask you a little bit about your background and I guess what in your background in landscape architecture. So, I guess what inspired you to go into landscape architecture and becoming an education designer and teacher?
Yeah. Um, so I grew up in the 1980s in New York and Pennsylvania, and I cared about a lot of things. I cared about people and nature, and I enjoyed science and art and other just multiple things. And going through school, I was just like, oh, I was just thinking, how could education even just be better and more helpful for communities, people, and nature? And like for instance, I really enjoyed uniting subjects together. I liked, putting history and science and art and culture and nature together. And I've just always enjoyed like problem solving and creativity and education, innovation, curricular design, history, science, art, helping people,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as tying those things together. And so that carried on. So when I was in college in the 1990s, I went to the University of Illinois, and I studied landscape architecture because it united many of my interests together. Um, so I was interested in people and nature and science and art and history and a bunch of things. And landscape architecture definitely deals with all those things and ties them together. Like I had a college professor, Robert Riley, and he said, so landscape architecture, it's the sustainable, enriching, harmonious fit between human systems and natural systems. And landscape architecture is an art and science, analysis and intervention. And there's lots of different definitions of landscape architecture, but I like that one. That one's really concise and it ties all those things together and ideas.
Do you want to go over just a brief description of the basics of landscape architecture? So when you're looking at the landscape, for instance, you're looking at the different aspects of the land, basically. So I was wondering if maybe you just want to briefly describe what that
Yeah.
entails.
So just to really put it concisely, what landscape architecture is the shape of the land, right? The slopes, the hills, terraces, valleys. Um, and also the water, like when it rains, where does the water go when it flows across the landscape? And also even the hardscape. Sometimes people don't think about that, but the paths, the plazas, the patios, the ramps, the steps, fences, gates. What do you see when you look across the landscape? You see even garbage cans and lights, and there's tennis courts and basketball courts and swimming pools. We do the hardscape too, and of course the plants. And the plants are fun because you plant them and they grow and they're really beautiful. So the trees, the shrubs, the flowers, so kind of those things. So the shape of the land, how flat or steep the slope it is, the water, where does the rain go? And you don't want water to flow into a building. That's a very important part of landscape architecture. No floods, please. and the hardscape and the softscape, so the plants.
Do you feel like that landscape architecture gave you a good basis for your work now and what you do with your teaching programs as a way to, I think of the landscapes of learning, if you want to talk about that a little bit, because I find that
Yeah.
fascinating you developed is it the Joseph Elliott Schoolyard in Boston, Massachusetts?
Hmm.
And just kind of integrating the concept of play and learning into the landscape for children.
Yeah, I definitely want to bring all those things together.
Yeah, yeah,
How can we make, I mean, I think there is some parts of education where you just need to sit down and read or write or just listen to an instructor for, a certain length of time. But otherwise, other parts of the landscape architecture should be up and running around and engaging with people outside and kind of learning about the land and the community and being active and cooperating with your fellow students. So there's both, you need the balance between just sitting still and quiet and being up and cooperating with people. And yeah, so after college, I went and I worked in Boston, Massachusetts for about 5 years in the early 2000s at CBA Landscape Architects. And so I worked on just a variety of projects. It's definitely residential yards and urban streetscapes, and also parks and playgrounds and schoolyards. So that's the John Elliott Schoolyard was an example I shared with Lexi. And that is just kind of example of, okay, how can we tie education into the landscape? I think it could work both ways. With the Elliott Schoolyard, I was taking like, oh, so what's maybe something academically that they are learning in school that also applies to the outside and playing and fun, and kind of again that the history, and science and reading and math. How do you tie all that into the outdoors and play? So definitely, and my boss got the job for us at work, and so she immediately was like, oh, Elliott School's in the Italian section, and that's the historic Italian section of Boston, the North End, where the schoolyard is. And so Fibonacci, he's the guy with the number series 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. You take the two numbers that are right next to each other, you add them, and you get the third consecutive number. And it just happens that series also reflects how the seashells, seashells are like the mollusk family, how they're the single seashells, when they spiral, they get bigger kind of in that proportion, the same as the Fibonacci series. So that's kind of how I brought nature and science and kind of history and put that all in the playground. And then also eventually, and my background has been in nature. I mean, we learned about physical geography and plant biology and ecology. So I did know some things about nature, but I was also always wanting to, well, what other activities can we do? Like, I guess, yeah, we can make little botanical gardens in schoolyards to help people know about plants. And then, but what are other ways that the people can just, go outside and learn more about their community and nature? And that brought me to, so the tracker school, I discovered that in around 2010. And the tracker school has lots of activities and fun things for kids to do outside to learn more about nature. Sometimes when people think of nature, they think of nature as, oh, it's a beautiful view or it's someplace just to walk through. And I've always, I think when I grew up, that was kind of the people who I were around. I mean, that's usually how it's presented to me. And I think, so when I was early in my landscape architecture career, I don't, I didn't really know, lots of different ways to get to know nature and activities to do in nature. Other than like, yeah, you walk around, you see it, maybe you could study the plants. So I was really excited to learn from, the tracker school, just different awareness activities. I love the awareness activities and and getting to deeply know nature. And so from there, that's when I started teaching nature classes after that, with all the lots of different getting to know nature activities. And then, but with my landscape architecture background, see, that got me thinking, I mean, what kind of landscape can I help like grow and develop in a way that can kind of better suit my classes even, and help kids to learn about nature. And it's nice to, especially, you know, today in society, people like building spaces. And because like for different purposes, you know, like going to school, they'll have like an art classroom, and they'll have a science classroom. Maybe down the hall, they'll have like a music classroom, and, you know, in another room, they'll have like an economy classroom or something. And then people tend to do those things in those rooms because, you know, they're built. And even in landscape architecture, it's interesting. I mean, landscape architects affect what people do outside, you know. So if a landscape architect builds or designs a walkway, you know, over here or over here, well, that's like where the people are going to walk. And if you build a swimming pool, well, then people are probably going to swimming there, or a skateboard park, you know, well, that's where people are going to skateboard. So definitely, if you start making outdoor activity spaces, like, or I call them outdoor classrooms, I think that'll attract more people to do those activities, getting to know nature in those spaces.
That's fascinating. You're right. When you have a sidewalk and that's where you're gonna walk, that's where you're gonna see it's gonna direct your attention basically to that. And maybe we will miss things if we don't have other areas that we go in or that are available to us.
Yeah. And then what I wanted to add was, yeah, a lot of nature activities and stuff that we do, I mean, they can be done just about any place. You know, we don't need to build specific places for them. I think so definitely we don't just have to go around the whole world, like just every square inch building something for a learning, let's learn about nature space. But I think it's good just to have some places just to kind of attract our attention to and help just guide us. Let's make sure we're incorporating this into our life. It's nice just a visual spatial tool. Oh, here the spot is. Let's go in and use that spot and do these activities.
So, but I do want to kind of go into what you're doing now with your teaching, and if you want to introduce kind of what you're doing now and the projects you're working on. You want to talk about what you teach? Some of the things.
Yeah, that there. Yeah, so I teach nature classes and even interdisciplinary classes, but we could all call them nature classes. I mean, I definitely do science and art in them, and and connecting lots of other subjects to it, like what we do, you know, I do some primitive skills with them as well, like building a debris hut. And that's you know, those that kind of ties in history, you know, what have people been doing for a long time ago and up until, you know, just recently too. And or even I like ecology and economy. And just, you know, ecology includes, you know, just everything in the natural landscape too. You know, the plants and how they relate to the animals, and even the water and the land itself, and the rocks, and even how that relates to ecology, like where does our stuff come from, which definitely even ties back in to the primitive skills, like when you build a debris hut, it's like, where are you getting your sticks from, your and debris, where's all your housing materials coming from? So it just helps us think about you know, where everything comes from, and put it simply. And so that even ties into, so, you know, it's good, I think, to have different kinds of goals, like a kind of a more an easier, simple goal that you could definitely kind of implement right away. So that was kind of my Galien Valley Nature and Culture program. just to get those nature classes up and running and doing lots of activities. They even planned. So then my larger goal is to start an ABC garden, is what I call it. And that even, the ABCs, what the ABCs is like the 1, 2, 3s, just the really first simple early steps of starting to do anything. So when you go to school, you learn the ABCs of the of reading and writing. First you do the alphabet, you learn what the letters look like and what sounds go with them, and then you start putting 3-letter words together. So you're reading short words, and then you read short sentences, and then in your starting you read little books, and then you get into chapter books with paragraphs and bigger words, and you can do that also. I think modern school also does that with math too. They're very good. You start with math with just learning how to count to 20, and also, and then adding the 1-digit numbers together, and then later you do more complex math. You add the larger digits together, you multiply, you divide. Eventually you do fractions. Much later on you're doing algebra, and so you just get more complex. So I think what's helpful to society, to communities, people, and nature is at least just always starting very small and simple, ABC, with everything that we do. So not even just with reading, writing, and math. So I think modern school is very good teaching reading, writing, and math. Starting simple and just gradually getting more complex. And but I think society, it would also be helpful for all the kids to even learn, well, like, what's the ABCs of economy, and like, I know in school, right away, like even in first grade, people try to learn coins, and dollar bills and how to add them together. But I think, money isn't like the ABC. I wouldn't put money is like more complex. If you think about the history of our economy, it wasn't like humans existed and immediately there was money. Money came on much, much later. So what did people do first? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I mean by the ABC garden. So not just ABC for reading, writing, and math, but also other things like ecology and economy. Where does our stuff come from? Like, if you built simple things, like a debris hut is much more simple than a modern house or a castle, and we could definitely get into all those things, but I want to do the simple things first. And even with and also like science and art, how would you make science and art really simple? And what is, this gets into language when we talk about science and art. What does science and art mean? And I guess to put it, so because nowadays I think in modern times, when people think art, what's the first thing they're going to think? They're going to think of a drawing or like a painting, like on canvas, or they're going to think of a sculpture. Which those are definitely examples of art. I would say that. And maybe we could let's put them in the fine arts category, which that's what they're called. And then, but I think, if we really narrow it down even more, just make it more basic. What is art? Actually, it's actually broadening it, but making it basic. So I think art is an expression. It's kind of what we give out. Same with a drawing or a painting or a sculpture is an expression. I think so even when I'm talking, and I make a face, or we giggle at each other, that's our expression. That's even kind of, this is our art. So right now you and I are doing art. We're even making this video, so art is a really broad topic. It's not just drawing, painting, and sculpture, which is fine. Those are the fine arts, and they're wonderful and they're useful and everything. But and then what's the opposite of art? So if art is expression, like giving out, showing how you feel, and sharing your opinions, hopefully very nicely. So then I'd say science, actually, if you really kind of make science really basic and you open it wide up. So science is observation. which lots of people would agree with that. It's what you take in, it's kind of your awareness and the knowledge and kind of wisdom that you get. So you still have, ecology and physics and chemistry and biology. I mean, those are definitely sciences. I mean, we could call them the fine sciences, like you have the fine arts. And then, but at a really basic level, we're all doing science and art every day, like every moment, into something that all people do. Like, so in this video right now, when I'm talking, that's my art. And that's kind of your science, because you're kind of observing, you're taking in what I'm giving out. And then, and it goes back and forth, because, I'll finish what I say, and then you'll do your art and I'll hear it. And that'll definitely affect my science and what I'm going to say next. So definitely science and art, they go together, and they just, they interact with each other and help each other, hopefully. Yeah.
I do think that we are hitting on something important, which is that science and art is kind of a relationship between the two, and they're not separate. Whereas sometimes, I don't know, from my own perspective, and this is actually something I've been wrestling with lately, is how do you define science and art? So that's beautiful, by the way. That's an amazing
Thank you.
description of it.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of developing this ABC garden. Like, so like I'll have different paths. Like I have an activity center, where you make art, the art studio, economy art studio, kind of in the center. And I'll have like a science and nature trail, go around kind of the outer side, and it gets more into different habitats, like, woods and prairies and stuff. And, but really, like, everything, those, even though I'm like separating those two areas, really, when you learn about stuff that's in nature, I mean, you're learning concepts that you use when you make your art. Like, for example, I mean, you make a debris hut from different kinds of wood, and where does the woods come from? The tree that comes from the nature, and you're learning about the different kinds of trees. So kind of knowing the science helps you do your artwork. Yeah, definitely.
What else can you tell me about? Do you want to talk a little bit more about like the programs that you run at the Galien? I'm saying it completely wrong.
That's okay. Galien.
Galien, because in my
Galien.
head
Yeah,
it's
Galien River.
Galen. So now I'm just like, it's Galen and Galien.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit more about your programs at the Galien Valley?
Yeah, so I guess the first class I ran was the wilderness and culture class, and that was kind of it was kind of a sampling, a variety of all sorts of things that I teach in my other classes now too. So in wilderness and culture, again, that was a related kind of how so much of our culture is based on nature, from our just our housing and the water that we drink and the air we breathe, and kind of the music that we make, the art that we make, all those, even our science is heavily based on nature. And that, so I had those kind of what I do in my habitats and wildlife class now, which is very like science and observation awareness heavy. That was in my wilderness and culture class. And also lately I've been teaching the nature and community arts class, where that's where we do lots of hands-on, like building kind of wilderness skills. We do our debris hut and water filter, and we talk about foraging for food and some other activities. So that was kind of more based on art. And then and I also do a community and landscape eco workshop that does kind of even tie further more into kind of nature and the economy, and how can we build communities. So we kind of discuss different kinds of communities, how they could be sustainable with nature and things. So those are the, and I teach a couple other classes in past as well. But right now I'm kind of focusing on wilderness and culture, the community and landscape workshop, the habitats and wildlife, and the nature and community arts.
Want to talk about the ABC garden a little bit more? I guess with the ABC garden, you're kind of developing it right now.
Ideally, I want the ABC garden to help people like learn the ABCs of a community, even make like a small mock community for kids, and be like, and tie that into the simple primitive way. Everyone has like materials to build a debris hut and to make fire and find food and some tools and stuff like that. And maybe we just practice that. I think it's the most natural thing in the world. And so just to have kids practice, like, how do we evenly distribute stuff? So, I mean, honestly, it's almost like I want the ABC Garden aims to help like teach people how do we end poverty, kind of at least in this little mock community first. How do we get everyone working at something? Because at ABC everything's pretty simple. I mean, everyone could do something to help their small community, and we distribute that stuff. And then even a larger step is, how do we actually do like an outreach into the community and start actually helping the nearby parts of the community and the greater community. So I see it kind of as an economic innovation, civic innovation, social education innovation. I wish like school would teach us how to end poverty and develop a fair economy, and while keeping all the innovation kind of keep going. Yeah, so setting up kind of so first at the ABC Garden, just to get that sense of community cooperation to run a community and a little economy. I think it's, I mean, maybe, let's say it's fine that there's a global economy, but even if there's a global economy, I mean, we should at least still ABC, like get that learn how to run a small economy, then a larger one, and then a large, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean. That's what's missing. So school has the ABCs for writing, reading, and math.
Okay.
But what about for science and art and community and economy? And how do we end poverty? And I like peace. I think peace is an action. It's not just, obviously everyone knows what war is. I mean, war is fighting. And then sometimes people think, well, then peace is not fighting. But I don't think so. I think not fighting is just, it's like a truce. It's like a standstill. And it doesn't get us very far from war. It keeps us on the edge. It's like, okay, we're not fighting, but maybe we'll start soon. But I think peace is actually, it's an action to cooperate, at least in those, like understand how do you run a small, fair, sustainable local economy. And then maybe, from that, just like in school, ABC 1, 2, 3 for reading, writing, and math, you start simple. And over the years, you get more complex. I mean, and I think we definitely need to do that for how do we diminish poverty? How do we run a fair and sustainable society? So that's kind of, so you have, the ABC Garden has nature around it. And like when people use nature, I mean, how could they take care of nature while they're using it? Because we do. I mean, every economy uses nature. Even I mean, capitalism uses nature. I mean, no matter what economy you're in. So it's very important to learn how do we run an economy and use nature and take care of it. And what also the word economy. I love this, like economy and ecology. What are the 3 letters that begin with both? Right? Eco. And what does eco mean? Like in the Greek language, it's an ancient Greek. It actually means home, believe it or not, home. So ecology is learning about your home in nature, and economy is learning about how to take care, how to manage your home in nature. Actually, that's what it is. And how do you meet all your needs and take care of your home at the same time? How do you take care of nature and meet your needs at the same time? So that's what ABC. So what's the simple way of doing that first? And then from that, we can build on to more complex ways.
Well, thank you. Thank you for going into that a little further. You're brilliant. You are amazing.
Thanks.
I'm excited. We're going to do a second interview where we're going to talk a little bit more about these topics. So I feel like this is a good place to just end here. And
yeah.
Do you have anything else that you want to add before we finish up?
Yeah, so I'll include, like in the links, I'll have my Galien Valley Nature and Culture program, link to that, the ABC Garden, as well as words. As I'm creating my programs, I'm just thinking about, okay, when I say a word, what do I mean by that? Like ecology and economy and science and art, and what's sustainable mean, so I made my own little short, dictionary of how I would redefine words just to make them more precise and to help. I mean, they generally still mean the way that we think they mean, but kind of maybe a little bit different view. So to get people thinking more about how community and nature relate to each other. So yeah, definitely the definition thing I'll include on there. Then this is the 40 sustainability skills, just if you want to look at that. That was because I made that like 10 years ago, because 10 years ago I kept hearing about people just kept mentioning sustainability as being technology. It's like, go out and buy this, get an LED light or buy an electric car, and then just recycling and supporting parks, which that's a little different too. But I think also being sustainable gets into even education and ecology and economy and our culture. So that talks about that. That's good. So I'll put
We'll put
Lexi will put up those couple links, and you're free to explore those.
There's a lot to explore. So.
That's good.
But that's why everyone has to check you out and go to your programs and your classes and just learn more from you, because you are a wealth of information and you just have so much to share. So thank you so much. I really
you're welcome.
Spending the time today. Thank you for watching this interview. And if you want to learn anything more about Zoe, please check out the links below. And thank you.